Lord. Hey friends, I am Pastor Nico for those of you at Orting United Methodist Church who I got to meet last week as we started this new worship series. And of course, hello to everybody at Girdwood Chapel. Today I get to introduce you to my good friend Rachel Byers, who is a deacon in the United Methodist Church serving in the Vancouver area out in the community. And Rachel's going to walk us through our exercise for this week on creating a spiritual timeline. And as a special treat for all of you, you get to watch me go through this for the first time with Rachel as an example for all of you to work with as well. And so you get to see my really great drawing skills right here on video. So, Rachel, what are we doing today?
Well, right now we're hoping that my dog doesn't growl too much at the neighbor dogs because that's his jam. But aside from that, we're going to be working on a spiritual journey timeline. And it sounds very challenging and like something you don't want to do, but it's actually a lot of fun. So to do this, all you need is a couple of things. You need something to draw on. I like just a blank piece of paper because it gives you enough space to really think about what you want to do. And then something to write with. It can be a bunch of different colors, just one color, a stylus. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this space to think about our faith and to think about it in a different way. We're going to think about it in terms of what's happened in our life, and we're going to have a visual for that. And so together, we're going to walk through this, and we're going to learn a little bit about your life, Nico, and about where God has showed up in your life, and maybe some times where you felt a little distant. And we're going to talk about that together and see what we can glean from it. So Nico's going to pull up his whiteboard for us.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! And the very first thing that you want to do when you're doing spiritual journeys or timelines or maps is to draw your base. And I like to draw some curves, like a curvy road going through the countryside or down a mountain, because my spiritual journey has not been very straight. I don't know about you guys, but mine has not been very straight. And then just like a timeline, the beginning is when we're born. That's when our journey starts. And the end of that line is typically where we are right now in this space. And then what we're going to talk about together is all the stuff in between. So what I'm going to have you do, Nico, is take the next minute or two, or 3 if you need it, and go through the timeline from the beginning to now, and just kind of put a couple of tick marks in places where you felt really close to God. And this can be before our baptism, right? Or after. This doesn't have to have anything to do with church or faith. It can be a time when we remember we went on a hike with our grandparents. And in that moment, we felt really close to God. But we're going to mark down some of these times, and we can write those. I like to use pictures because it's fun to look at a picture. If you're not a great drawer, you can just write the word. What was the event that happened in that moment that helped you feel really close to God?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not a great drawer either way, but I will try to do this and narrate it a little bit. And because you said baptism, and because I was baptized as an infant, and that my family of origin are mostly United Methodist pastors, and we're all there at my baptism, I'm going to draw a little water squiggly right there. And just write birth fam, for my birth family. Because being born into a family where my grandfather was a pastor and both of my parents are pastors was obviously a huge part of the foundation for me. Other big events that I can remember. I'm just gonna put a little, okay, where'd my pen go? A little tick mark here. And a little, this might be familiar to you. As an early camp experience with, in middle school, I went on a backpacking camp, and one of my counselors there was the first person I can ever remember telling me that they saw leadership potential in me. And so that was a really influential moment in my life. And let's see if that's middle school. I'll call this one kind of the end of high school being a pretty important point. Again, with some camp stuff going on and some church stuff going on. Oh, and this is where I forget which side of the logo, the cross and flame, the flame goes on, but I'm going to say it goes over here.
You got it.
Yep. Had a really awesome spiritual experience in 2014 at the base of Mount Rainier while I was out backpacking. So that's Mount Rainier, and I'm surprised that looks so good. And back to family. I'm going to say that getting married was an important spiritual experience in my life also. So, come on. Couple rings right there. So, kind of a start to a timeline for my life.
Absolutely. And all moments where it sounds like you felt really close to family, close to God, and close to those who were mentoring you and that you were close to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Some of the things that's also important for us to notice in our lives is times when maybe we didn't feel so close to God. I know that I've struggled with depression a lot, and so there's some spots in my timeline that kind of look a little stormy, like maybe they're a little black, and I know God was around, but I didn't really feel close to God, and I didn't really feel that support. And so where are those moments for you, if you have any of those that show up?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting in that a couple of the most important in terms of my faith development and discovering God in my life immediately follow some of those really stormy times. So like this period in my life, a lot of change, a lot of upheaval, a lot of really struggles and not wanting to be involved with church at all. Pretty mad at God for a while, actually. And then again, through here, less mad about God and more just really a lot of personal upheaval going on. But then also, immediately followed by that experience that I remembered watching a sunset on Mount Rainier.
That's beautiful. And it's important for us to see these moments and to practice talking about them. We talk a lot about what we call mountaintop experiences, and it goes back to the passage in scripture where Jesus is on the mountain with the prophets, and Peter wants to build these altars to the prophets because it's such an amazing experience and he wants to remember it forever. And those are the moments that you've highlighted that are places where you felt just so close to God. But it's also important to talk about the spaces where we didn't feel as close to God. We're not perfect and we feel things in a lot of different ways. And it's important for us to go through our lives and to say, I was kind of mad at God right here. And I distanced myself a lot and I did a lot of yelling, and that's okay. It's okay to talk about faith in that way, because the thing about God is that it's a relationship. It's not just something that exists, but it's a relationship. And in relationships, we have hard times and we have great times and we have stormy times. And so that's something that I love about this, because we can see when those stormy times are. And like you talked about, Nico, a lot of these stormy times for you happened right before these mountaintop times, right before these times where God was super close to you. And I'm curious about if there were any times in your life that didn't involve community, any times that were maybe just you and God, where you felt super close or super distant. Tell me more
So,
about that.
yeah. So again, following a really stormy period of my life, a lot of upheaval, having to just figure out and discern where it was I was supposed to be. Um, as you know, every time I was trying to make a plan and then that plan just gets thrown out the window kind of thing. And so I finally just said, forget it, I'm going backpacking. And I actually started out with my best friend Chris on this trip, doing the Wonderland Trail, which is almost 100-mile trail around Mount Rainier. And he wasn't able to complete the last quarter of the hike with me. And so the evening after he and I split up, I was sitting at a campground on the east side of the mountain. Campground's called Indian Bar, and was just watching this gorgeous sunset, just as the light is slowly creeping up the mountain with the purples and the ambers and the reds, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And I just had the most profound sense of peace I've ever felt in my life. And then I woke up the next morning and started hiking, and I got to this like little sunny hilltop spot, and I just dropped my pack and like went running through the field and was just celebrating. And I mean, nobody else is around at all, and it was just one of the most joyous moments of my life.
That's so beautiful. And
Yeah.
I love that you can share this, especially for all of us now that are feeling like we're just inside. We haven't seen our worshiping communities for a really long time. And it's still not safe to see one another really, or to be close to one another. And moments like this are moments that I think a lot of people are really looking for.
Yeah.
Um, and they've happened for all of us, I think. But God is there even when we're not maybe at church or at camp or in our community, that God is still very present and very active and working in our lives.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so as we go through the spiritual journey timeline, one of the things I like to do is have everybody draw their map, right? Maybe your map is straight because you're a little bit more left-brained than I am. Maybe it's got a bunch of curves in it and twists and loops. Maybe you need to start over a couple of times. But what we're going to do is not think too hard about it, because the thing about our lives and about our spiritual journey timelines is that they change. Mine doesn't look the same as it did when I did this project the first time. Mine looks very different right now because I noticed different times in my life where I felt really close to God. And the thing about the Methodist theology is that we have these little bitty moments of salvation over and over again. And those are the times that you see highlighted on Nico's map that are the color times, right? These moments of salvation where God showed up, and maybe you were expecting God and maybe you weren't, but man, did God show up.
Mm-hmm.
In these moments where that means so much more than anything else in your life. And there's some things that are collective too, some collective experiences. I'm going to guess that this time we're in right now is going to be kind of a stormy time. But it's okay that to say that we see God in this too. And maybe to say that we're a little angry at God. So what you guys are going to do, as far as I understand, is you're going to work through your spiritual journeys with your pastors and draw these times when you felt really far away from God, or like maybe God wasn't there, maybe you're really mad, and these times when you felt just really close. It's the closest you've ever been to God and to something holy and something surreal and something beyond you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and this is the part that's scary for some people, we're going to share it with others, because the thing about faith is that it's not just a straight up and down thing. It's not just between us and God, but it's between us and God and each other. And so we're going to start talking about our stories. And it's going to feel a little scary for some people. It's not easy to talk about the hard times. And it's very easy to stay in the happy times. But it's important to talk about the hard times too, and to talk about our journeys, and to talk about just the many, many places we've seen God and we've seen our faith come to life. And so I'm excited to see what you guys come up with, the different transformative experiences in your life. And I think I'm the most excited to see how it enhances your relationships with one another and with your pastors, because this is such an incredible way to get to know one another, and to ask your pastors about their spiritual journey timeline, because some things that show up in their timeline might surprise you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for introducing this, Rachel. What I love about it is such a natural invitation to story. Whether you sit down with a couple of friends, or with me or Pastor Alexa, or if you sit down with your spouse or your family, and you just draw it out, whoever you're with, it's easy to ask questions. Well, tell me about this little mark or this tick that you've made, or you've got this great big wide open space. What was life like in that big wide open space too? Because I was looking at mine and thinking through all of that formation I had as a young child in churches, and how that wasn't a high enough point, but how important that was for laying the foundation for me to interpret so much else of what God was up to in my life. So thanks for introducing that tool, Rachel.
You're
And
welcome.
working with it with all of you.